Jermaine, I am so wonderfully happy to be talking with you. Everybody, this is Jermaine Stone, who is a hip hop and wine expert. He's
Yes, yes.
also an author and a host. He's kind of like me in a way. Yeah, but Jermaine, I want to. We've talked before, but I wanted to ask you, like, how this is such an interesting specialty. How does hip hop fit with wine? How did you form your career around those two things?
Mm. Well, I grew up, first of all, thank you for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be sitting with you and here on your show. So thank you for having me. But no, I grew up in the Bronx, New York, submerged in hip hop. It was, many people look at hip hop as a genre of music, but it's truly a lifestyle. And, the same way that wine is a lifestyle, hip hop is also a lifestyle. There's certain things that sit within it culturally that exist across the board within hip hop culture. So that said, I was born and raised within hip hop culture, submerged in it. And so that's just who I was. But then, right around when I was college age, and I was so close to getting a record deal. I was on BET, I was on Hotline. I was doing all the things to the point my parents were supportive of my music career. But once I graduated high school and they would let me rock and do my thing, I just kept getting into more and more things. And so much of it was indicative of a lot of the lifestyle that's spoken about in hip hop. And my parents were just like, look, it's cool for you to keep pursuing music, but you have to at least do some sort of a plan B. And, that's when I started looking at getting my business degree and stuff like that, but still pursuing music. But once I got into the wine business, I fell in love with the wine culture. Often people can fall in love with the beverage, but I was in the wine business for maybe 2 or 3 years before I truly began to appreciate wine and enjoy it in that way. But the wine culture was what spun me. Like I said, I started at a young age. I was 20 years old when I took my job packing boxes, and I it was a very formative time for me just as a man. So to be exposed to so much at a multi-million-dollar wine auction house, I'm around collectors, winemakers, high-end wine retailers, restaurateurs. I'm just hanging out with these people because it's also a lifestyle oriented business. And I began to realize that the same way that these were all new experiences for me, I was also giving all of my peers in that space new experiences by telling them about my upbringing
Well,
and my knowledge base.
this brings up a really good question because, we're going to talk about share and pair Sundays in a minute, but knowing that I was going to talk to you today and thinking about sharing and pairing, I was thinking to myself, how do we, how does someone who loves wine, as you do, as I do, how do we turn other people onto that pleasure? Like, can it rub off? Can you get it through osmosis? How do you get your friends who are not yet into wine, let's say, how do you intrigue them about it?
Mm. Well, that's a very good question. One thing that I realized is just wine overall, it can intimidate people. However, that same intimidation can be reshaped and used as just having reverence and respect for
Mm.
something. So if you invite people in wholeheartedly and help them understand where that reverence comes from and why, without them feeling that they're being judged, but also helping them to feel welcome. That's one, a big part of it. But two, is also drawing like common relations, something that I'm actually on tour right now doing. Well, I'm about to start my tour. It's called the Terroir Tapes Listening Sessions, where I pair wine regions with hip hop regions. And that's just, when I'm talking to my friends that intimately know hip hop regions and can pick up hearing a song from Memphis just by the tempo of the hi hats, the same way I knew I have wine friends that can tell, like, oh, this is from Napa. You know, it falls within the same realm. It's understanding what those regional elements that express themselves that way is what the pairing and conversation is about. But that said, finding ways for people that aren't of the wine community to relate to it, meeting people with where they are. So drawing something that they already have an emotional connection to and putting wine side by side and showing
Mhm.
a metaphor for it. That's all sommeliers do all day. You know, if you don't know what it tastes like, the sommelier is just gonna create metaphors around flavors for you to have a concept of what that wine tastes like. So
Yeah.
that's essentially what I do.
I love the idea that you're working in sort of two emotional slash sensual areas, right? One is listening and sort of internalizing feeling that music, and the other is feeling the wine, tasting. I mean, both of these um, they're emotional areas. They tap into our sensory apparatus, and not just wine, but food too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably a triangle: food, wine, hip hop for you, I'm
Yeah.
imagining.
Oh yeah. That's all. That's a vacation for me. That's pretty much all the pleasurable things for me.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, let's talk food. What do you like to eat with? Because I'm doing a series of videos for Share and Pair Sundays. You know, it's the idea of just getting together, and it can be sometimes when people think about pairing wine and food, they think, oh, I've got to do it in an exact way, and I don't know what the rules are, and it's going to be a big ordeal, and I always think, no, it can be, I don't know, a glass of Chardonnay and some potato chips and friends standing around your kitchen. It doesn't have to be, I don't know, it doesn't have to be fussy. It doesn't have to be
Exactly.
formal. So, like, give me a favorite pairing that you like.
Uh, um, let's see. What is like my go-to? I'm trying to. I thought about this a little bit. Oh, okay. One of my all-time favorite pairings is drinking like a tawny port
Ooh.
with some Easter bun. That so it's like this like cinnamon and spice bun that they sell, like Caribbeans. A lot of Caribbeans eat it during like Easter and Passover. So but it's like this sweet cinnamon-ish spiced bun, loaf bun, and some pork. That is an amazing pairing.
Wow, I can get that.
Yeah.
Hmm, that sounds fantastic. And tawny port is just, it really does lend itself to, you don't have to just drink it at the end of a meal, right? It can be drunk, as they do in Portugal, throughout the meal. And in summer, tawny port over ice. Ooh, that sounds so good. I
There's so much.
Yeah, I have sort of a version of that myself, which is a somewhat related idea, which is Madeira and chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
know,
can,
mm,
yeah.
that it's kind of sweet on sweet, but both Madeira and chocolate chip cookies also have this underlying bitterness, especially like if you get good cookies that are made with bittersweet chocolate.
Hmm.
Hey, man, I could just, I'm not supposed to have Madeira and chocolate chip cookies for breakfast, I'm sure, but every now and then, that is a winning combination.
See, now you got me thinking about some pairings. 'Cause I'm thinking, like snickerdoodles with things within that family, I think would also be really, really good.
Ooh,
I'm a big caramel guy.
yeah,
So where I can bring in some nice caramel pairing options, I'm always a huge fan.
yeah. Now, do you feel like your wine knowledge has hit a peak that you're good now. You know most of the, key classic varieties around the world, or do you feel like the more you know, the more the world of not knowing kind of expands?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Whereas the more you know, you realize the how little you know. Um, but really, so much. I came in from the space of learn about what you like, and so that was like the journey that I got into wine through. So even though like I know all this stuff, it's always I've never really focused on things that I don't personally love to wrap my mind around. So that's why so much of what I learned has kind of has gone through phases, almost like different levels. I remember when I first got into wine, I started where we all started, Moscato. And and which
Yeah.
is fine. I didn't have I wasn't aware of how to choose the best Moscatos, but I was drinking Moscato, but then it went from Moscato to Riesling, from Riesling to Shiraz, but then from Shiraz to that was when I started, going off, then I got into white burgundies. So my profile began to evolve the more that I drank. So I think for me, I've always been someone that's, I submerge myself in the space when I'm really there. So everything that I've learned has been levels of me submerging myself in that area for
Mm.
such a long time.
It's
But it's also really fun, doing a lot of the content that I've created. I have to submerge myself into that stuff so much to write scripts and things like that. Um, so I'm always kicking around new ideas. And when you realize you have to break something down to such a simple point to be communicated on camera and understood and enjoyed, you get to learn the information in a different way.
Yeah, no, it's true that sometimes the best way to learn is feeling like you gotta teach someone else or tell someone else about it. And so you
Yeah.
really have to know it in yourself really well. If you went from Moscato to white Burgundy, my friend, you also went from $10 to like 300 a bottle. And hey, I know that story too. I mean, I started my first wines that I loved, cost 89 cents a long, long time ago. And they were like Bulgarian reds. And the reason I chose Bulgarian red is because I was living in New York, where you live. I was living in New York then. And wine shops back then were so formal, and they always had these men in suits. And I was a young woman. I knew nothing about wine. I was terrified that they would ask me, what do I like? What am I looking for? And my response would have been, if I knew what I was looking for,
Right.
I would just go get it. I don't know what I'm
Right.
looking for. So this one store that I used to go to always had an on sale bin right in the front of the store. And it was always filled with Bulgarian and Hungarian red. So that's it was 89 cents a bottle. I mean, for about 2 years until I finally graduated to German Riesling, and not even very good German Riesling, but for Milch. It took a couple of years to really um, I felt like my palate, it was like being in training, like being an athlete in a way, that your
Hmm.
palate it was getting better, and it was being able to discern flavor and
Yeah.
texture.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like I was in a pressure wash. And so that's kind of why I went through that the trajectory in that way. It was my world. That was my job. I'm constantly around it. I'm constantly arranging these collections, and I'm sitting and drinking with people, and then, oh, this consignor, you did a great job. They just want to give you a bottle. So that was how, and then understanding the back ends and seeing where to get deals. I also understood imports and logistics and all that stuff. So I was able to I just had access to so much good wine, and I was just always around it.
Yeah.
I just got really lucky. So I had kind of a backwards wine education.
That is so lucky though. And it started really humbly, right? It
Yeah.
started just, packing these boxes. And for me too, it started really humbly. And I don't know about you, but I believe in that. I think sometimes people feel like, oh, they would never be able to be in the wine industry because they have to come in, at some kind of high level. I think
Hmm.
the best way is to start in a really easy, humble way, and then you're in the swimming pool now, and you
Yeah.
learn how to swim.
Exactly. It goes so far, having, I mean, also just from a managerial standpoint, when you're working with people that you have empathy for, you understand their job. So they can't tell you, hey, this thing takes an hour when you know it takes 15 minutes. Getting to know the nuts and bolts of the industry in the way that I did was because I, started from the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's undervalued starting from the bottom. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So what do you tell me, you told me earlier that you were thinking of getting something Jamaican to have today. Like what is that?
Yes,
I want to,
yes.
yeah, describe
So
that.
I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's definitely in the authentic bag here. I got it's actually called Jamaican flavors. This is not my usual patty place. I just moved in this neighborhood over here. I'm in Bed-Stuy now. And I love Jamaican beef patties. Parents are Jamaican. I've been going to Jamaica since I was 5. Lots of great stories there. But beef patties is something that I have a special affinity for. So of course, growing up in the Bronx, I grew up in the Caribbean section of the Bronx, bunch of Jamaicans all around. And when I started my show, Tasting Notes from the Streets, the first food pairing that I had was Jamaican beef patties with cocoa bread, paired with Spate Burgunder, which was an amazing pairing. But on that show, it really articulated what I wanted to communicate, which was that we talked about hip hop being a culture and not a genre. There are foods that are cultural to hip hop that follow the train that came from hip hop. So this is beef patties that, of course, came into New York City and other areas that that happened during the big Jamaican and Caribbean migration into New York in the mid 70s. Hip hop came at the late 70s, started by a Jamaican immigrant, but also, lots of support with the Puerto Rican community, of course, in the South Bronx. But, this Jamaican guy, Cool Herc, moved from Jamaica with a different style of DJing, of blending the records as opposed to stopping, talking in between, and then starting a brand new record. This is right, during the disco era when all this is happening. But of course, they're not just going to come in with different styles of DJing. They're going to come in with foods and things like that. So around when hip hop was being discovered by America, so were Jamaican beef patties. So you got to think, if we both met this friend at the same time, we're all a part of that same era. So this is how this sorts of food also articulates a culture in a certain way.
Very cool. And what do you drink with Jamaican beef patties?
So because I have my backwards wine education, I'm drinking a what vintage is this? 2019 Riesec Sauternes.
Oh, my goodness.
And this is you can't quite see it because of this filter thing, but it's a really cool bottle. This is the redesign for Riesec. This was the first vintage that they did this. And this was actually a gift from Miss Saskia Rothschild when we did our first wine and hip hop festival. She sent a whole bunch of Riesec out for us. And first of all, I love that family, one. But two, I really like this wine. I think that Sauternes is something that is very, very underappreciated But I also think, similar to, we talked a bit about Falangina earlier, but similar to Falangina, I think there's a lot of room for growth in this region, in this marketplace, because the same people that enjoy Moscato will enjoy Sauternes, and you can introduce it to them in a completely different way. So here I am today pairing this with food. Often, we talked about how, port, often people think about that as a dessert wine. My whole thing is thinking about food and wines completely differently. I think that this is great and complementary towards like a lunch meal or something like that, especially to be paired with a rich and spicy food like this.
Yeah.
Having that like sweetness in this wine, but then I got a little hint of sweetness in the cocoa bread, but it's also really thick, so that acidity is coming through, chopping right through that, and the sweetness is complementing the spiciness from the patty. So, and then you have a very full-bodied wine that can stand up against these very rich and intense flavors. So it just works out, man. It works out great.
You know how what I always picture is when you have a really opulent sweet wine like Sauternes, which Rio Sec is, I always imagine that it's like a pillow. And now you have this spicy, intense, complex flavors, little heat, little spice. It just the pillow, the sweetness kind of absorbs the impact of all of that spice. And
Exactly.
your head and your mind and your palate are just like, whoa,
Yeah.
what is this?
Exactly.
It is so good. And I agree. I mean, people think, oh, sweet wines, they're kind of old fashioned. But I think that's, I don't know, that's undervaluing how fantastic they are with spicy food. And we know about spices that the average American today consumes 10 more pounds of spices
Wow.
in just the last about 15 years. Like, who doesn't have? I mean, I probably have 5 hot sauces, sriracha, the
Yeah.
whole kitchen. I mean, the refrigerator door is full of
Yeah.
Mexican and Asian hot
Same.
sauce.
Sometimes I just buy sauce I don't need, like just so I have it in the house for some variety. I'll need it eventually.
Yeah, yeah. I heard last year that there's one example of how much our collective palate has changed. That the Asian company that makes sriracha had to halt production. They like couldn't find enough peppers to
Wow.
make that. They were running out of sriracha. And 20 years ago, you probably, sriracha was not it wasn't exactly in common vocabulary for people. And today, man, if you like spicy food, it's bottles of it are on restaurant tables.
That's true. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
regular condiment. But I
So
mean, you
maybe
think
it
about
will, maybe it will be.
flavor profiles change. Like think about with when like prosecco, off dry and dry, like all of that started because of the palates being a certain way at a certain time, and then over time, like, okay, no, that's actually too sweet. Now, no, this is fine. No, that's too sweet. Okay, and that's just pretty much what happened.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
wow.
Um, Jermaine, it is so good. It's good to see you. It's good to talk with you. I hope you're going to participate in Share and Pair Sundays, or at least a few Sundays.
Yes.
And if not on Sunday, Sunday's kind of a state of mind. You can do it on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday day, or all of the above. So,
I'm always looking for reasons. I'm a big fan of wine elevating food. Right now, wine has so many uphill battles to fight. I think that highlighting the aspect of how wine can elevate situations, especially situations that come with food, it's a way to elevate any experience. So,
I'm with you. All right, my friend. See you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.